Hello, welcome to Conversations with Life. This is Cedar and Sochi and Keith, and we are on episode 2 of season six.
Can you believe it?
A bunch of them. Yeah, six seasons. We'll just call 6 a lucky number for this coast. This season we're talking about what we're calling group field technology, but how to really get a community, a group, an organization, a group of beings working together towards the betterment of humanity, and especially spiritual groups, but really any group. And today we're going to fractal down in this process, and we're going to look at our inner selves and the community that everybody holds in themselves, and how that then can maybe be the start, or the question is like, how is working with ourselves, with the group, with the many parts of myself that exist, how can that then, be part of this? And how is that group vibe that we talked about last episode, how does that apply?
I'm reminded of an article I saw recently about a woman who got I think it was a Nobel Prize for discovering that biology works through cooperation instead of competition. That was kind of this groundbreaking discovery. And I feel like human consciousness is kind of evolving into a similar awareness, where we've been in a kind of cutthroat hustle culture and it's not working. And what's possible when we start collaborating, and how does that apply to me as an individual? And I don't have to, drop in very far to my inner landscape to find the voices that are competing and arguing with each other, just even inside my own mind.
Yeah, it's the Darwin-Wallace debate, where both discovered evolution, or came up with a theory of evolution roughly at the same time. Having a hard time talking tonight. And Wallace emphasized the ecosystem. And he said that evolution happens through all these organisms working in a particular ecosystem. And Darwin emphasized the individual struggle and the will of one individual to survive. And that emphasis makes a big difference, because both are there, obviously, but which is the driver? And Darwin's theory was much more convenient to the aristocracy at the time, who thought that they were better and that they were just better survivors and their genes somehow were superior to the others. The subtitle for Origin of the Species is A History of the Favored Races, which is often omitted from from the teaching of that particular book. And but Wallace said it's this system, and Wallace was a free earth guy. He was a free land guy. He was like a guy who was like, let's give the poor people land and see what happens. Like that was like his vibe. And, so obviously nobody listened to him, at least not the powerful people who could have, forwarded his concept. So that's one of the places that modernism went really bad, is that we discovered evolution, which isn't a wrong thing, but that it is cooperative more than it's the ecosystem doing it, rather than the individual will to survive and thrive, is really interesting. And it's interesting that we start there, because biologically, this is a really interesting thing. Like, I can observe myself and say, I'm a bunch of cells working together in an astonishing harmony of processes. And I think we mentioned last week that we don't even understand. We have no really great concept of what makes something alive, for instance. We don't know. We can't alive things. We can't Frankenstein something and make it alive. Like how that, we can observe the functions and get complex on the chemistry, but we have no idea what's actually happening there. And I think that gets to the very, very center of why groups go rotten, is because we are not listening to, we think we understand life by understanding its parts. And we don't. We have no clue what's going on actually that makes life happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and interestingly, another piece that I've found that I kind of hold on to it as a mantra almost is that, like, the world's only going to change from the inside out. It's only going to change from me figuring out, like, what's going on inside of me that is perpetuating what's going on outside of me. And so, what can we learn from the concept of me as a being? What if I am an emergent field of life? And how can I support the systems that are listening to that emergent so that they're in harmony with each other instead of in competition with each other? Mm. And I think the place where we have the most power with that is in mind.
Yeah, it's really interesting to take it from a civilization wide place first before we kind of delve into the fractal lower. But we watched The Invention of the Art of Lying. Have you seen this movie?
Oh yeah,
it's really great.
It's a great movie,
and it is.
There's a meteor coming towards the Earth. The only stop is to have sex right now.
Yeah, right, right. But
is your place closer?
The beautiful thing is that he could have done anything, and he didn't.
Yeah.
He did a lot of stuff, but he didn't violate somebody's basic boundaries with it, because there's something else there, and that else is the harmony. He doesn't want to win the girl by telling her that he can change their genetics just by
making more money.
By making more money. He could have pulled that off. She wouldn't have known, but he didn't, because what he wants is harmony. He wants love. He wants that system to work together. And there's something there that is mystery, that is rich, that is beautiful, that isn't mind. It isn't the stories we tell. It's something else that is maybe we could call it an undefinable quality.
So Keith, if I say was coaching you and I said, I want you to listen to life and move from there, how would you respond to that? How does that land for you?
Listen to life. Oof, life is noisy. I'm thinking about recently. This is, if we were having this conversation in a coaching session right now, right? You guys got to hear a little bit of the drama that's going on at work today, right? Mm-hmm. This has just been solid build of crazy. This new job is pushing me in ways I've never even thought I would be pushed. And then I'm also trying to get back into health and training and fitness and stuff, starting podcasting up again. And I'm running 2 different shows for theater because right now we could use the cash to make Christmas happen, right? And I am so overwhelmed. I would love it if life would just shut the fuck up and let me breathe.
Okay.
Right?
So that's life out here.
Yeah, that's where. That's
so
my
this
response.
this is why I'm so glad I asked you this. If you could imagine the place where life enters you, and lives you, and listen there, how is that different?
It's more focused. When you said life enters me, I immediately thought of the chakra points, right at the top of the head, that point, and going straight down into the ground, right? And so it felt like I almost want to sit up straight And if I wasn't sitting on a cushion on top of a couch, like hit the ground, right, and feel the lightning go straight down. Like, I can't really do a lot of posture correction on this situation right now. We're in a new studio, folks.
I wish we could turn the camera around right now. It's so good.
I'm literally perched. But like it's very focusing. Like that idea kind of was both focusing and grounding at the same time. But it also felt sharp. Like it feels like almost painful, you know? And so to me, it like the initial reaction was to straighten up and also somehow recoil from that feeling, you know? So I would be like, I don't know how to listen to that, but it feels scary, you know, like right now. And it's funny because I've done a lot of like listening work and I've tried to do a lot of that stuff. And I feel like I'm in a really great place. I'm in a very agitated place with my life right now. But I feel like I'm in one of the best places I've ever been because I've been listening to that track.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm curious if there was a moment today in the upheaval at work where maybe you caught that. You dropped in and moved from an emergent space rather than like a frantic space because you're being drawn in all the directions. Or if you didn't, if you can imagine a moment that would have maybe gone differently had you moved from.
So it's interesting because today it really actually like things were going nuts, right? We had like huge problems at school with student behaviors and stuff. And in the past when that's happened, I found myself being really reactive to those things and having to really regulate myself in order to be there for the kids. Today was one of the first days where I actually felt like I was moving with the river instead of against the stream. Like it really actually kind of felt like a flow. So in the day, I had 7 students in my office throughout the day, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's literally the whole day there was a kid in my office, right? Freaking out about something. And where sometimes that feels like hitting a stone when you're in the river in the rapids and you get knocked to the side and twirled around. Today, it felt much more like weaving through and sort of catching that. And so usually I would get home and I would be exhausted from a day like today. And funnily enough, I get home and I'm actually like, I know I've made the joke of wanting to go to bed, but I'm actually invigorated by the day. Like I don't feel exhausted. So there was a moment where, you know, there's some rumors and stuff going around like kids do. They tend to, you know, they want to reenact the Vampire Diaries situation, right? And there was a moment today where a genuinely good kid that I've had really good interactions with basically just threw my door open and he was in full tears. He was having a breakdown about these rumors that were going around. And it felt very similar actually to when I described like life hitting the point where it goes through me, that like lasering in on focus. And it's so funny because if you asked me just like, do you feel like you were in your element today? I would have been like, no, it was wild. But now like thinking about it from this perspective, it actually is like, yeah, that's when I like, to quote them, locked in and, you know, was able to actually help. So it was interesting. Like sometimes when you're faced with kids, especially who are in crisis and crisis after crisis after crisis, you see a kid who is, you know, dawdling in the hallways when they should be in class and you snap at them because they're just like right there and it's quick. And today I'm walking from a kid crying in my office to dealing with another kid who's looking at a suspension. And I find one of these sloughing kids and we just go for a bit of a walk, like deviate from my course. I guide him back to class and take him in and congratulate him on having a good day yesterday. And off he goes and has the great rest of his day. And now thinking about that, I'm like, that's not how I would have reacted to that on a different day. Like yesterday I was freaking out and being like, I think I'm over my head. And today I kind of feel like I'm surfing a little. I don't know. Maybe I'm finally standing up on the board. Like, I don't know. Anyway, that's a long way of saying that. I feel like I got in my element.
I love that. I feel like it illustrates a lot. One thing that I'm noticing is that when life is leading, you can handle a lot.
Yeah.
And another thing is when life is leading, it enlivens you. You know, it gives you the resources that you need to handle whatever. And you're much less likely to feel drained. And I think a lot of what creates suffering or feeling drained or whatever is our resistance to life. And I also love that when I asked you about listening to life, what you described was outer noise versus what I think of when I think of life is like the current of energy that is like moving and creating and doing all of this. And just like the difference between those two things, and how culturally life is this checklist of things that we're supposed to be managing versus this current of energy that's like potentially can exquisitely guide everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like when you first said it, that's what I was thinking of. It's like all the things I have to do in life to be accomplishing things. I think that's a very like masculine energy kind of approach to life. And I'm also in this position of authority now too. So I feel like it's like kind of tripping me up in my own masculinity sometimes, where I'm like, okay, I'm essentially a school manager, and I'm like, you know, and so I do have a ton of things to accomplish. And then when we started talking about the life guiding and that kind of stuff, I immediately went to the river analogy. And it felt more like centered in my emotions than my first response. My first response was centered in reaction. And my second response kind of felt more like it was centered in that reality, that like emotional place. I don't know. It's an interesting way of looking at things.
Well, and if you even like went with like the river is the feminine and the banks are the masculine, like the river creates the banks in nature.
Yep, it's true.
You know, we've reversed that with canals and reservoirs and all of that stuff, but in nature, the river is actually what creates the banks. And that has been my experience in working with life principle and in myself and also in group fields. And we've talked about parts work, and particularly the work that Cedar does and that he introduced me to. But like, how would this apply to the process method and parts work that you do, Steve?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things is that we've taken on a lot of our healing work from a materialist perspective. And it's just like education. We've taken on education from a management perspective rather than from honoring the current of life that's coming through our children. And the codes, the information, the blessing, the genius that they are, and trusting that, like my cells get created at the right time to do the right thing. Those children in our social ecosystem have been created to do the right thing, And so, we've taken on these things from this perspective. When you are taking on healing from a materialist perspective, for instance, or spiritual process, you're listening to, you're thinking about what you want from here, and you're saying, how do I do that? And so I'm going to use energy drugs on you instead of drugs, right? Or I'm going to use some kind of practice that will do what your ego or what what you from up here in the noise think you need to solve the problem, right? Rather than going under that and going to soul, right? So, because what we really want is not necessarily those problems to be solved. We want life to feel meaningful, and meaning is somewhere between the soul and our life and our personality, right? It's like it's the communication between the two. And if we're smart, mostly from the soul to the personality. And so, that flow, listening to life, listening to, and, we can think of it as her, but I think of it more as the whole thing. Like she's not there if he's not there. And he's not there if she's not there, So I think of it like you can't, that goes with Alan Watts' thing. Like there's not a thing. But I think the her works because that's the part that flows. It's the part that's moving. So if I'm working with a person and I'm trying to treat a part, and I'm trying to work with parts from this place of, got to get this part to behave so that we can get what we want, right? That's bullshit. I'm managing, I'm managing my parts, and parts don't like to be managed. They'll comply. You can like whip them into shape or discipline them or treat them or do what you want, talk nicely to them, whatever. So you get along. But what I'm interested in when I'm working with somebody is how does that person's soul, like that, and to define soul again, like our relationship with everything at our very, very, very core. Yeah, the thing that they are that meets this ecosystem in the exact way that was designed in a way that I couldn't even imagine, but that the universe or God or nature or whatever the hell it is that's doing it has done, that is happening. So how is that happening? Happen through that, and then how do we work with all of the person and their parts to get that more online, so that what's ready to happen there can happen. I had
this, I'll call it a conflict earlier today. I had just this like sudden sort of adrenal crash where I just got super tired, started having a headache. Podcast is getting closer. Steve finishes up his stuff, comes in, and he's like, "How are you feeling? Do you want to do a podcast?" And I was like, "I don't, and I'm willing." So like, give me an example. If that was the scenario, if I was a client and I was like, I have this podcast that I'm doing, but every time that day comes around, like I get a headache.
My body is reacting to my emotional unwillingness to engage.
Right. I mean, you can listen to that at a body level. So there's a lot of levels there. So there's no right way to do that. Because one of the ways is listen to your body and fucking go to sleep, Like, I'm fine with that, like that's okay. And a lot of good can be done from just listening to the body, but the body isn't always programmed well, like it has anti-life parts that are active that when our soul comes up, especially, it's threatened. It's like, wait a minute. The soul does not care if we live or die. And I was made to survive, this part that's the survival part. I was made to survive, right? So fuck that soul business. I'm going to do something. I'm going to make something happen. It's heart attack time, boys. No, I was kidding. Let me kill you to keep you alive. No, it's time to get sick so we won't do the thing that will actually kill us. We'll see this, but what it doesn't answer, what that part doesn't know is that the soul is interested in life in this broader sense, right? Like it's going to serve life, even if that means the person's death. So
what would be like a materialistic example of healing that versus a more like life principle?
Yeah, approach? So you might do a Reiki session and you're going to work on your fatigue and you're going to like, it's like energy drugs. I'm going to treat you with energy drugs. And there's a time for that. It's fine. And it works. Energy work works. I think what would be appropriate there is to drop down a level. So when I ask you, I know you, right? You're like, what is this body available for? At the deepest level of service that you could muster in that moment. And you're going to do that thing that's the deepest level of service that your resources allow. Right? I just trust you there. So, with a client, I might ask some questions. With you, I just have to ask that one question because there's already that level of trust. But if I was working with somebody, I would say, well, maybe someone's like, I'm in this relationship and all of a sudden I hate my husband and my body goes, ee! Every time he comes in the room, Well, okay, we need to manage that so that you don't react that way to your husband. That's one level, right? And then I would try to treat that. The next level is, okay, let's just sit with that feeling and listen to it. what's going on in that body part? Is that truth or trauma? Let's hear the parts that are coming through. And the next level is, what is the deepest honoring of your soul? Because maybe you're not supposed to be in that relationship. That's from a soul level. See, people want to hear that on the personal level. They just want me to solve the relationship. You know, I had one client comes in and is like, I just want my wife back. You know, and we're like, that is not how it works. She's not here with you, for one. So she's not as interested in that as you are. She is not in consent with us doing some kind of voodoo magic right here and working with you so that you can manipulate her better. You know, that's what basically he's like, you need to heal me so I can manipulate her better.
Yikes.
That's not the game, brother.
I like the way that you said that, because I feel like that's kind of another way to say the materialistic healing thing. And I think one of the nuances about the situation I described is the goal wasn't to get me to a place where I could come to the podcast.
Right.
That wasn't even what I was listening to. But I was listening to the part of me that really likes to keep my commitments. Like, that's a strong value for me. And I also was aware of the pattern that when I feel some kind of resistance to something and I show up anyway, a lot of times my energy will start moving. Like, I don't have a headache right now, you know? And I knew that would likely happen, at least. And, you know, probably on the way home, it'll come back. Like, like I'm aware of like that there is something going on with my body here, but I also knew that like this experience is a way for life to move through me. And it's a way that like my soul gets to express on a larger scale. And so, it honors that. But the manipulation thing is really interesting there. That a lot of the healing work we do is still sort of about like getting what we want. And we haven't actually asked the question if what we want or what we think we want
is actually good for us.
Is actually like life affirming or good. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was interesting. So the other day I was going to the gym and my stepson wanted to come, and usually my wife and I will go and then we'll invite one of the kids, and she had a bunch of work to do. She's like, I can't. And immediately my reaction was, cool, see you guys later. I'm out. Like, I'm not taking him with me by myself. That's going to make it so that I can't do a good workout. It's going to be frustrating. He's going to ask a bunch of questions. And I saw like the look on her face before I even got the words out of my mouth. And she's like, I really wish that he would engage, she would never have said anything. Right. But I was like, I was like, okay, she needs the break. I need the connection. Let's go. And so we go to the gym. And I'm like, come on, Dallas, we're going to the gym. He's like, what? We're going? And he like lit up. And I'm like, yeah, we're going. Let's go to the gym. Let's go to the gym. And I'm like frustrated that I've decided to do the right thing. So I'm kind of like, yeah, hurry up. Like I'm already in the car. But we get going and he's doing his damn 13-year-old best to lift weights, right? And, he's like lifting a little 15-pound. And he's like, damn, man, I wish I was stronger. And I feel so weak. And, and I'm bigger than him, so I'm lifting like, a 45-pound weight where he's lifting a 15, right? And like, see that guy over there that's lifting 90 pounds in the same exercise that I'm doing with you right now? I don't give a fuck what he's doing. He doesn't give a fuck what I'm doing. Like, but you give a fuck what we're doing. And we had this like conversation of, why are we here? What is the goal of this thing? I'm like, if the goal of this thing is to get better, then it's awesome that you're starting at this place where you're really not great at it. Because next week, you're going to lift like 5 or 10 pounds even more than you are today, right? So you have so much room to go. Like, think about how much fun it's going to be able to look back at this later. And he's like, yeah, but I feel so bad about myself now. And I'm like, you're 13 years old. Like, you're supposed to be limp noodle. Like, your body is just barely telling you that it's time to go out and hunt. And so we talked about this idea of body manipulation. And we're talking about how, like, that's all this is. We're just coming here to trick our body into thinking that lifting heavy things is a requirement for our survival. So it'll get bigger so we can live. Because your body's going to see that you're going every week. It's going to be like, shit, this guy lifts a lot of heavy stuff. It must be necessary. And I'm like, mate, 3/4 of what we do in life is just manipulating the things around us to accomplish a goal that we think is good. You know? And I'm like, what I think is good has nothing to do with what that guy thinks is good, because that guy lives here.
Yeah.
You know, and he's jacked. I'm like, that he looks great, but I don't want to do that, you know? So like, I accomplish my goal just by doing this thing. And so he's talking about it, he's like, well, what else? And I'm like, well, every time you're nice to your mum, you're manipulating the situation at home so that you get to go fishing and play video games. Yeah. He's like, no, I'm just being nice. I'm like, why are you nice? He's like, well, because I like my mom. I'm like, that's good. Why else are you nice? Because when I'm not nice, I get in trouble. I'm like, yeah, see? Like, and so it's so funny that you mentioned it, because we spent like 2 hours at the gym and driving back, and we had all these moments of connection and conversation that came from my wife's inadvertent manipulation of my heartstrings, and then my deliberate choice to call out his insecurities. And we like ended up with a really solid connection moment and a really solid goal moment. And the rest of the week, I've just seen him like light up in the space, you know, and he's having his morning hard-boiled eggs and his protein shake, and, you know, he's getting ready. We're setting up the weights for him so he can go on days when he can't come with me. And he's like, I'm going to trick my body and get so buff. And I'm like, great, man. Like, just, that's awesome, you know?
Yeah. You know, and it's, tricking is a funny word, right?
Yeah.
Because in some way, we live into the reality that we want to be the case. Yeah. So if we want to be stronger, and to some degree that creates health, we want to create health, then we live that place, right? But there's care there, like, and slowness. And I think that's one of the things that happens with, you know, there's this really interesting energy of both nurture and initiation, and in this process, right? Mm-hmm. So in the process of trying to live into the life, or to create a meaningful and healthy and good life, part of it is nurture. Like, part of it's just like, I care about you, you know. There's an energy there that allows for slowness, and it allows for weakness. It allows for everybody to be where they're at, you know, that kind of thing. And then there's initiation. And initiation pushes the boundary of your edge, you know. And it's where you pick up the next weight, you know, and you initiate your body into that next container. You know, you're done with the 15, now you're moving to the 20, you know. Or you do that extra 5 minutes of cardio or whatever, and now you're pushing your body into that next place. And it's a pretty good metaphor. Both are really necessary. If I was all initiation all the time, I would build an outside life and I would have no heart in it, right? And if I was all nurture all the time, and I was just like, yeah, just keep lifting that 15 weight, man, just forever and ever and ever, and never ever think about getting anything better, because you don't want to be so hard on yourself, man. Just take your time. Then I would never get to...
Yeah, your body would be like, oh, we don't have to have more muscle. We can do this thing.
Yeah, it's funny because both of those in the extreme actually shut off life current. So it's like the analogy that we've used, I think maybe even on this podcast a couple of times, with the bungee cord, you know, like if you pull it too tight, there's no energy going through it. But also if you relax it so much, there's no energy going through it. And there's kind of that sweet tension. And I think, yeah, like nurture and initiation could be two of the things that can create that tension where energy actually gets to flow through us, which I think is a big part of what gives us the sensation of meaning in our lives. And I think, you know, I can think back on that situation, and you could have been like, I'm going tonight for me, and this is my thing.
And I mean, sometimes that's what I need
and
to
that,
do.
Yeah, and that could have been the thing.
But...
And also, like, there's a tremendous amount of life that moved, not just in you, not just in your son, but probably even in your whole family field, because you found a sweet tension between two things that could have been in conflict with each other.
Yeah.
When I think about this, as far as we're working with all the parts of us, and I think it's a really good question, like in any group field, but just like in my own internal place, like which parts of me just need to be held and seen, and which parts of me need to be initiated into their higher self. So one of the structures that is true is that every part of us that we think is a problem is actually a genius part of us that just could be released into its form of expression that is on the top. So my chaos, for instance, my brain is also my creativity.
Right.
My when I harness it and sit with it and don't judge it and don't try to push my chaos into creativity, like in some forceful way when it's not ready. But when it's time, let it rip. Let's turn that thing and let's let it go. Let's push it. So I think all of us have parts of us that are really need of nurture. In any group, you think about any classroom or any organization, there's people that just need to be seen. It's like the kid that comes in class and he just wants to sleep all day. And in any other class, he would have been whapped on and said, "Wake up! You're supposed to pay attention to class. How dare you? That's disrespectful." But I see a kid who's probably not sleeping and probably just needs a break, and probably maybe is depressed, or I don't know. And so I was just like, "Hey, I would love for you to listen and participate, but I'm not going to bug you."
Yeah, and I think we're culturally in this place where we feel like we have to earn nurture.
Yeah.
And it's backwards.
Yeah.
Because my experience is if nurture's there, then, and the energy starts to flow because the nervous system relaxes, and then the energy starts to move, the next natural state is challenge.
Yeah.
Next natural state is initiation.
Yeah.
And whether we're talking about initiation as like, breaking an edge, or even just initiation as like, I now feel intrinsically motivated to do the next thing because I'm not feeling forced or pressured or threatened or shamed. I actually feel so full of life and love that, like your son, like that was so affirming for him, for you to hold him both in his tenderness. There was a lot of nurture in that conversation. You weren't just like, shut up and keep lifting weights.
You'll be fine. Go.
Or
grab the 30.
Or you're right. You're just like a wimpy little ass, and you better work harder. Like there's ways you could have really killed that.
Yeah.
And instead, like he on his own is now finding initiatory energy to move past some of his own limitations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in a group feeling, this is what happens. This is where so when life is coming through, it does, when it's attuned, when it's listening to the center, like in a session, I'm doing a healing session with somebody, I just kind of know. Like, okay, is this the time to take this part out? Not really, but to meet it with some
force,
treatment, some energy. Let's move this energy. It's ready to go.
Yeah.
Or is this the time to just simply cry with this person, mourn with them? I do a lot of that, honestly. Like somebody will get on, they're having a hard time, and we'll just sit there and just go, "Yeah, this sucks, man," and that can be the best. And life knows, what to do. So I think one of the things is so listening to soul, or listening from a place that's deeper, and having the orientation of trying to let energy through rather than trying to manage it from somewhere else, trying to manage it from outside of life,
Mm-hmm.
and just making assumptions about what should happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
You find yourself in any moment doing and saying things that you didn't plan,
Mm-hmm.
and it just does it. You don't like. In fact, planning it out can be helpful, but also destructive to your process. One of the problems without goal setting with a person like me is that I'm more in my flow. Like if you say, "Here's a goal," go do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, So part of me gets inspired by that, but part of me is like, no. What if something else happens that's magical? There's always that part of me, probably to a fault.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, there are so many things in my life that have happened from listening to life that are so far beyond anything I could have imagined. And I think that's one of the problems with a goal or an agenda, is that it's limited by what we already know, or something that happened in the past, or what we've seen from other people. And what life almost always brings is something that is more rich and nuanced, and actually like precise to our individual circumstance. And again, like your example, Keith, was so great, because that experience ended up being, you couldn't have imagined that. You couldn't have imagined and planned all of that bloomed from that experience. And what happened there is so much richer than you like hardlining it and just being like, yeah, I'm just going to fucking go to the gym because I got to check this off my box today.
Yeah.
Which would have been fine. Like sometimes we got to check off our boxes, but that when we drop into that listening to life, usually we get more of a yes and the experience is richer than anything we could have conceived ahead of time.
Mm.
There's another piece here that I want to mention, and that is with parts work and like thinking about groups and listening to life and moving from there. And that is that there's a book called No Bad Parts, and I love that title, because in a group there isn't the wrong thing, and if somebody's mistake or bad behavior or something that would be harmful isn't demonized,
Mm-hmm.
it regulates itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very true in any field. Like the thing, if you don't demonize somebody's behavior, or if you don't demonize anything, then it isn't a demon.
Shocking.
Right? So if I see my violence and I know my violence and I know my anger, and I can sit with it, and it comes out in times, and if I can sit with that and try to understand it and try to see where exactly that's deviating from life, like why is it anti-life, then rather than just trying to control it from a place of, oh, it's anti-life, it must be suppressed, it must be killed, it must be gone, put away, that thing that we do so much, and holding things in shame rather than holding them in understanding. I think one of the magics of a group field, a real group field in a spiritual circle, whatever, is that this will happen. You don't have to fix it. Mm-hmm. Now you can boundary that, and at some point there can be split. It depends on the behavior, right? Mm-hmm. But in any case, if it isn't demonized, then it tends to just regulate, mm-hmm. tends to just solve itself and move back into harmony.
Yeah, and you can have loving boundaries and even loving stops or controls, if behavior gets to a point of harm. Even within ourselves. Like right. I can have a loving stop that doesn't have to demonize the part of me that wants more, or doesn't want to do the thing. But that I can come to it with love and say like, hey, I hear this, I feel this, and it seems like there's a better course of action. Like, let's do this together. Like, I'm going to stay with you because you're not bad, but there's something else to be like learned or lived here.
Yeah, and I want to use the example of, I don't know, we've been in it feels like such big energies and spiritual processes lately, initiations, etc. There's been some stuff. And I had a day coming back off of this California trip and through some other experiences that all of a sudden I felt like a teenager again. And like I didn't know what to do. I was confused. I wanted to stay and just do nothing all day. And I wanted to just like play a video game or view porn or whatever. I wanted to just be like,
that does sound like teenager equipment.
Right. It is. And it's just like all of a sudden I'm just watching this part of me that doesn't know what to do. And yeah, I have a boundary on some of those things. But I just kind of sat with that part for a good day where I'm just like, oh, yeah, this is like teenager Steve Barfus. This is like this kid that is confused and lost and lonely, and I don't need to force myself right now. I don't need to do it. Some of these behaviors are negative, but I can just like let it flow, let it pass, do whatever I need to do, and then it just passed. A couple days later, I had like the clearest day I've ever had. It's kind of been that was foggy to like clarity, foggy to clarity. Like, it's really interesting. It's quite a ride, but I didn't want to regulate. I could tell that was personality. That was there were parts of me triggered and in action that were not my best selves. But also valuable parts of me. And it's like, hi. Hello, thanks for showing up. Maybe this is part of what's been happening in life,
Yeah, and there's something too, like getting something out of your system and letting it run its course, but from a place of love and curiosity and observation, rather than shame and then collapsing into this like, oh, I'm just going to give into this and then feel bad about myself and like create this addictive loop. There's something about, okay, I'm a yes. I'm a yes to you playing video games for 4 hours, and we're just going to watch this together and notice how you feel. And in my experience, in a similar process, we've both been kind of like playing off each other in this like energy experience of having these like young personality parts just come out and be like, I want to eat treats all day today. And it's just like, okay, let's try it. Let's see how that goes. Instead of, oh, not you again. I thought I had you locked safely away in the cupboard, for forever, And what happened for me, and I think Steve had a similar experience, and some of our other friends actually have all kind of been in this together, is there was like this moment where like that battle ended. Like that pattern just sort of like evened itself out, and it was just like, yeah, I actually don't need that anymore. And now I'm like in right relationship with that thing. Like I don't need to be in a fight over this. And just like feeling that just like whoosh, where like for my whole life there's been this like, I need to feel a little bit ashamed about the fact that I have this, neurosis or this pattern that comes up now and then.
So, just to kind of think about, what if every human being saw themselves as an emergent field of their family history, life processes, collective archetypes expressing themselves. But what if everybody, instead of seeing themselves as an individual, imagined themselves as an emergent field from the whole? And that the whole, and really believed that the whole had created them because it needed them in some way. And we're set to, from a very young age, set to listening to life, set to listening to that core place, rather than told that they had to fit themselves
follow
into
a
an
path
economy
or a certain thing.
or do something that was expected them from outside. What would happen if we had that as our culture for every child?
I'm having this really beautiful thing drop in. It's bringing so much energy. It's making me want to like scream. But when you said emergent, and then you started talking about like all of the things that come before any individual human life, the word merge in emergent came through, and I just like saw like that each of us is a place where all of these things merge. We're like a point in the creation of life that's so unique, and our uniqueness is all of these things emerging from our, DNA to our ancestors to the place we live to, and all of these things coming together in this thing that's absolutely brand new in every second. And how like delicious and sacred and exciting that is to actually get to be that. And like we're with life, but we're also life expressing itself as the mergence of all of these different threads and pieces.
Yeah, I love that. The next thing I was going to say is, what if all of what we experience as trauma was simply the bookmarks for where energy stopped, because that was our sensitivity and those places held our genius. And what if?
I feel like I'd be asking the question of why do those stops, like trauma is one of those things that, it is so difficult to release from. You know what I mean? Like it grips your whole world and shifts your entire way of being. And I think about when you say like that's where energy stops. Or, I can't remember exactly how you said it, but it hit me enough that it shut me up for a few seconds. But why does that have so much power over who we become and who we or the choices we make compared to all that time that energy is moving?
Yeah, that's because I think life shows itself to us by stopping.
One of those like you appreciate life when somebody dies kind of situations.
Yeah.
It's like the thing with consciousness. Consciousness shows itself by coming into this ridiculous density, so that it can be realized from here, and in that, like it shows us that. So like, I think when trauma doesn't move, either in a society or in a human, I think it's because we just haven't paid enough attention, and maybe given permission. I think that kind of gets us to our next place, is where you're not meant to do this by yourself.
I think that's exactly where we're going, right?
Like, yeah.
How do we use that group technology? Because one of the things they talk about in tech, for example, there's a reason that a cable is not one like rod of flexible metal, and is instead hundreds and thousands of little wires, right? Because if one of them breaks or one of them bends or energy stops moving in one thread of a cable, the whole cable is not dead, right? Because energy goes elsewhere. And what you find is energy goes faster through the other conduits than the one that stopped. So I think about like society as like this sort of giant data cable for consciousness, and when some of us stop, others of us push forward even harder and transfer that information even faster. And also, and that gets me thinking about other weird nerd techie things like self-healing metal and things like that. And we can get into that later, but it's the same idea that atoms push each other in the same direction it's supposed to go. But I think this is a great point to say, like, I think we're finally seeing the reason and the meat behind group work. Because on my own, I can have trauma, I can stop, and energy can die. And even my society can have trauma, and energy can stop, and energy can die. But the world doesn't stop at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and life is undefeatable.
Right.
Life is expressing itself in some way, and it will be expressed. We're supposed to be self-responsible. Yay, self-responsibility. Yay, sovereignty. Just to whatever degree we can, we should work with our own little villages and ourselves of all the parts and all the genius parts, the not so genius parts, the stuck parts, the evil parts, the good parts, whatever is in there. We should hold that, but at some point, it's designed to not work.
And it's in the not work that sometimes you learn how to work.
That's the thing. That's what's revealed is, and I think this is every level of the system. What's revealed is we can't do it ourselves. And I think that's true of us individually. I think it's true of families. I think it's true of communities. I think it's true of Earth as itself. I think what is revealed is that at some point we need to find the harmony with the whole.
The larger system.
The larger system. When you really do your work down deep, you just naturally move into harmony with community. And when you're in harmony with a community, you'll naturally want to dive down and be more harmonious, find the places that it's not fitting, and do that work.
Yeah, and that kind of takes me back to the example that came up last episode about us getting to witness you in this really beautiful transformational phase of your life. And when we started this podcast, you were single and we were meeting with you in your little apartment, and then you've had these upgrades and it's been so awesome. And you were doing work on your own. Yeah. You were doing big work. But where it led you was into a family field.
Yeah.
And there are things I suspect, and I would love to hear about, that you've encountered in this family field that there's no way that you could have even known about yourself, seen that, or worked with on your own.
Yeah, that's definitely probably an episode by itself. But it's interesting to me that the same scenario that pushes me into a family field might push somebody else into an isolation or a movement of individuality and solitude. And so I think one of the things I'd love to get to at some point is looking into, group work that leads us to solidarity and solidarity that leads us to the group. It's really interesting.
Totally.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, we definitely have an episode coming up that's going to talk more about the synthesis and differentiation ideas. So
stay tuned to find out about this shit that I've dealt with since coming back into a family.
Thank you for joining us today. We've had such a beautiful conversation about our inner group work in each individual. And if you are enjoying this, please subscribe, share, find us on soulandspiritwellness.com, tell your friends about us. And if you have questions that you would like us to have conversations about, or if you'd like to join the conversation, reach out to us and come be on the podcast.